7 o'clock, so I'll call tonight's city council meeting to order. Karen, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Here.
Councilmember Valento. Here. Councilmember Erickson,
Here.
Councilmember Roberts,
Here.
Mayor Bain.
Here. I'd like to invite everyone to rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Council, we have an agenda before you this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And our agenda is approved. Our next item this evening is open forum. Open forum is any interested party's opportunity to speak on any topic of their choosing. And hold while we get the list. Thank you, Karen. And is it Eva Dros? If you would like, you can come to the podium.
I didn't realize I was supposed to sign up on that.
You sure can as soon as she's done.
Okay.
Right here.
No problem at all.
Can you
Welcome.
guys? Oh,
Yeah, we can hear you.
okay, perfect.
Could you start with your name and address just for the record, though?
Yes, my name is Eva Dros. My address is 7536 Castleberry Drive, North Branch, Minnesota.
Excellent. And the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much for letting me speak today. I'm actually here to discuss a couple different things. I'm a co-owner of Nothing But Hemp in Forest Lake. We've been in Forest Lake for going on 5 years now. We're located right on Lake Street North. Currently, we found out that there was a THC moratorium that was passed in Forest Lake last month, which is a huge concern for us. I know that there was some confusion around the new bill that passed in July. And what a lot of people don't realize is the bill actually made it safer. We are limited to only 5 milligrams of hemp-derived THC, per product, which is a very low dose. We are huge on educating our customers on how to start slow. We also sell CBD and other natural supplements. Most of our customers are age 45 plus. They're using it as a natural alternative for anxiety, for natural pain relief, for sleep. Currently, the location that we're in is very, very hard to get to. It's hard to reach. There's stairs. It's right off Lake Street in the front. A lot of our customers are old people with pain that are walking in with canes that have a hard time getting in. I had spoken with Leaf and Blake in about November, asked if there was any moratoriums on the agenda. There wasn't anything on the agenda yet. So we did decide to relocate to a location that would be easier for our older customers to get to. So we had signed the lease in November. And then in December, when I went to renew our tobacco license, and again, we don't sell tobacco. We never have, we never will, but we do sell CBD vapes. And anything that you inhale, they told us we had to have a tobacco license for. So I went in to renew it before the end of the year so you guys could approve it. And I told her that we're moving. And she said that we were too close to a park, within 500 feet of a park at the new location that we are going to, which was actually going to be right next to Don Julio's. And then she said our current location was too close to Lakeside Memorial Park, so we couldn't renew our tobacco license at our current location either. But we had been given one the last 4 years. There's another vape shop right on the corner closer to the park than us, so I'm not sure why they all of a sudden decided we were too close to the park. The new location we'd already signed a new lease for because our lease was up at our current location January this month. So we thought, hey, this is our chance to just move to an easier, accessible place in Forest Lake. We had already started build out. As soon as we heard about the moratorium, we stopped the build out. So we're already thousands of dollars deep in that. In our lease, we did put if a moratorium comes in place, we can get out, but we're still on the hook for 6 months rent that we have to pay regardless for damages. So as a small business, this is this affects us a lot. I know we have a lot of customers in Forest Lake. I know the community likes having us there as an educational resource. We put all of our employees through an educational course on cannabinoids and how they can help people and what they can do for the body. People are not coming to us recreationally, they're coming to us to find natural alternatives, to get off harsher drugs that are worse, to find something that can work naturally. So right now we're in a very hard place because we have to give notice at our current place. So I was talking to Karen with the city, and I wasn't able to submit for a renewal for the tobacco license, so I still want to see, we're still waiting to see what happens. But I just want to encourage you guys, if you would let us do an educational seminar on cannabinoids and CBD and CBG and THC and what people are taking them for and how this new law actually made it safer. Before July 1st, we could sell potencies up to whatever we wanted to as long as we were under 0.3%. What this law did is it made it safer. It put a potency cap on it. You have to be 21 plus, so now you have to be 21 plus to enter our store to even buy CBD, which is non-psychoactive. It's actually the opposite. People take it to come down. And so we just want to discuss with you guys further about lifting the moratorium in Forest Lake. People can still purchase these products online from out of state. We can still same day deliver into Forest Lake. You know, everything, all it's doing is hurting the local businesses that are here already and taking away that educational hub that our customers have with us in town. And if we were to leave, and a lot of our customers that can't drive far, they're in too much pain, or they don't know how to order online, why not keep the revenue here? Why not keep the businesses wanting to come to Forest Lake? We're hemp derived, we're natural. We've been here for a long time, so I just encourage you guys to set up something with us quick, because I do have to let my landlords, 2 landlords now, know right away if we can move, and about getting our tobacco license renewed at either location as well. Did you guys have any questions for me?
Any questions this evening? I expect this will be on an upcoming agenda, so, and we'll be in touch, and appreciate you being here tonight.
Okay, thank you for your time and thank you for listening.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else for open forum this evening?
That's me, right?
Yes.
Okay. New resident within the last few years. I have 2 kids. One is in
Could you start with
elementary.
your name and
Oh,
address
sorry,
for the
Mike Myosek. I live at 21510 Hoekstra Avenue, off 97. I have 2 kids. We moved here a couple years ago, bought a house. We live on 97, close to Stella's, the golf course, right in that neighborhood. Love Forest Lake. Can't wait for our kids to grow up here. I don't plan on selling our house. We got a great property. We're very happy here. However, 97 is a mess. And as a parent who would love to see their kid ride their bike to school, make it downtown, we're runners, we're bikers, we love outdoor anything. I ride my bike around the lake 5 times a week if possible. That highway is a death trap. We can't ride our bike, walk downtown as a family. I don't know what I'm asking or what I'm saying here, but I thought it would be good to bring it to your attention that maybe, I know you guys are building. It sounds like you have big plans for downtown, at least I've been seeing a lot. Once we're in our car, we can go anywhere. We don't have to come to Forest Lake downtown. A lot of the, I hope this comes off the right way, it seems like a lot of the money is down there. As soon as people get in their car down there, they're able to go anywhere. I mean, there's nothing that keeps them from driving to North Branch, whatever the next town might be. With all the, I mean, there's a lot of good restaurants here. We could easily walk down and get ice cream, ride our bike down there, get ice cream, but we're just not able to do that. You guys have this trail system here that comes right up to the high school and then ends. And it looks like, it sounds like there's been some tragedy there in the past already. I don't know what kind of money it would take, if that's legacy money within the state, to get that to continue. I don't know if you guys have already talked about this, and maybe I'm already beating down an old road. But having that trail system run down to Manning Trail and maybe even make it down to the park there, Big Marine, would be huge. I mean, you guys would, I don't know what that would take. I know it's not free. There's a lot of, I know, networking and all the other things that go into this, maybe getting sponsorships from local businesses to sponsor certain chunks of that line. But to open that up, to have that crossing, to make that accessible for all of these families that are literally cornered to that end of the city would be massive. And just for a new person here looking in, and to have all of this that you're doing here, that would be such a huge, like, I don't know, stress point for, I'm sure, not just me, but many families that are dealing with probably the same. And I see these guys riding their bikes, kids riding their bikes, families with their, you know, walking the ditch next to the golf course, and that's the best option. So, I don't know, I would love to, man, if there was anything I could do to help, I'd be more than happy to do it. But I just maybe having the conversation, getting it started, having you guys maybe put it on an agenda to talk to your local, whatever it is. I mean, this is where you come in because I'm just a new body here, and I don't know, I thought it'd be kind of a neat addition to what I think is a beautiful town on a beautiful lake with a lot of opportunity. So, I don't know, that's that. So, do with it as you please. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate the feedback. Thank you for being here this evening.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
And is there anyone else for open forum this evening? All right, hearing that, we'll bring agenda back to council. And council, we have a massive consent agenda this evening. I guess I'm open to any number of ways to tackle this. If council wants to make a mass motion to approve in full, we certainly can do that. If you want to go by sections, we could go by sections. I will sit back and see what anyone is ready to do from a motion standpoint. We have consent agenda items 6A all of the way through 6O, and O contains the one particular item.
Madam Mayor, just to get some other opinions here, I'm going to make a motion that we approve consent agenda 6A through 6H, and then treat the other individual ones, being there's so many of them.
Very good. There's a motion for consent agenda 6A through H. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and motion carries. That brings us to consent agenda 6I and those subsections. Is there a motion for 6I?
I'll make a motion to approve 6I, the massage business license renewal.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Next is item 6J and the sub-items under 6J. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have
I'll
a
second.
motion and a second, and 6J is for the massage individual license renewals. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Oppose? And motion carries. Next item is for the single license under the pawnbroker license renewal, item K. Is there a motion?
Also move.
And is there a second?
I'll
Is there a
second.
second? Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Next on consent is consent agenda items 6L, the refuse hauler license renewals. Is there a motion?
So
I'll make-
moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And consent agenda item 6L approved. Next, consent agenda item 6M, tobacco license renewals. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Oppose? Motion carries. Consent agenda 6N, liquor license renewals. Is there a motion? I'll move to approve the liquor license renewals. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. And last but not least, on the consent agenda, item 6O, which is for a new liquor license. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And consent agenda is approved. Nice work.
The question, I had one of these individuals reach out to me questioning, they both had a liquor license and a tobacco license, and they were questioning the reason for 2 charges for a background check. And,
Oh, interesting.
I don't know if that's state statute, or You know, you're doing, it's minimal, it's $25, I understand that, but you're doing the background check on the very same person. So they were just questioning why that was, and I said, I'd ask the question, so.
Noted. Can we maybe address in staff updates?
Sure.
Let's address in staff updates if we can. All right, 'cause that may, and I say that it may open another topic because I have a similar question, so it might just spark a broader conversation. With that noted for staff updates, let's move on to our regular agenda. And first before us is Resolution 123-2301, donation from the Forest Lake Baseball Association. And Abby.
Thank you, Mayor Bain and Council. The Forest Lake Baseball Association has done a number of significant contributions and improvements to Coolan Park over the years. Most recently, in September, you accepted a donation with gratitude for additional infrastructure improvements on the site. They'd like to continue with their infrastructure improvements on the site to build 3 double bullpen mounds near their athletic fields. The cost would be between about $2,000 and $2,500. They have requested the staff commit to also putting in some fencing. We've let them know that as we work through our capital improvement planning process, we will consider that, but that we can't guarantee funding at this time. So the council should review the resolution that is before you, which would be accepting the donation at Coolan Park. And if you agree, the council should move to approve resolution 01232301, I think almost like a palindrome, with gratitude.
Excellent. Thank you, Abby. And I would move that council approve with gratitude Resolution 01232301. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on this topic? With that, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and motion carries. And next this evening is also Resolution 01232302. And Abby, is this you as well?
Yes, it is. Robert Smith III has submitted a donation to the city of Forest Lake for contributions to the Veterans Memorial. It is a $1,000 donation. The city council should review the resolution, and if the council is favorable, they should move to approve resolution number 01232302 with gratitude.
Thank you, Abby. I would move that we approve with gratitude Resolution 01232302. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and motion carries. All right, moving on to 7C, we have a public hearing and a consideration of adoptance ordinance 719, which is amendments for zoning code related to accessory dwelling units. Order for this evening will be staff presentation from Abby, initial round of questions from council. We'll then open up the public hearing, hold the public hearing, and then bring conversation back to council. So council's got a couple of opportunities to ask questions, and before we move into consideration. Abby, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Bain and City Council. As part of the 2040 Comprehensive Plan, a land use goal is to explore compatible land uses for the agricultural zoning district. Just the idea to be, how can we expand the uses in that district to maybe help diversify our agricultural district as urbanized areas are expanding, but that can help still preserve our rural character and values in those areas. As part of our MXR1 density discussions, it was brought up of different ways that we could increase density, and the addition of accessory dwelling units was something that the Planning Commission had determined that those in the agricultural district can not only help provide density, albeit a small bump in density, but also meet that kind of land use goal to help provide some more compatible land uses in the agricultural district. So through several different working discussions with the Planning Commission in the fall of 2022, by December of this last year, the Planning Commission held a public hearing. They tabled for a month, directed staff to make some changes, but the ordinance in front of you is what they're recommending the council consider for approval. So as Mayor Bain had noted, that this is an amendment to the zoning code. The zoning code is specific that in order to approve a zoning amendment, you have to see that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, that it isn't in conflict with the other zoning regulations in place, and that there's a general public benefit. So this small change is allowing for accessory dwelling units, and again, these are detached structures. The accessory dwelling, or the agricultural district already allows for an attached accessory, like apartment or a mother-in-law unit, maybe a duplex situation, but doesn't allow for that detached unit. This small little change would help achieve some of our land use goals of increasing density and diversifying our agricultural district. The zoning code, as I noted, attached accessory units are already allowed. It also complements just agricultural living, tourism, those sorts of potential for agricultural tourism. And the general public benefit is it would provide for more housing diversity and expand property owner rights. So with that, staff has found that with the 10 performance standards that address bulk, mass, parking, utilities, all of the things listed in the code, that the proposed ordinance is in conformance with the standards set forth for the for a zoning text amendment. And both staff and the Planning Commission recommend the City Council move to approve the ordinance number 719.
Thank you, Abby. Council, any questions that you have for staff before we open up public hearing? Questions or comments? All right, with that, let's open up the public hearing. And so we'll open up the public hearing. And is there anybody that would like to speak on this topic this evening? Karen, is there anybody online tonight?
I have no online except for Kim. I don't think
Okay.
she's commenting on.
Okay. We'll hold for just a few moments. I won't make you wait full minutes, but we'll hold for just a few minutes. And to ask again, is there anybody that would like to speak in public hearing tonight on this topic? And hearing none, we'll close public hearing and bring the conversation back to council. Council, floor is ours for discussion, consideration, questions that you may have. I know this has been a topic of a lot of consideration with the Planning Commission, and I just really appreciate their work in getting us to this point. I have some broader topics on this, broader questions on this topic of accessory dwelling units, but I'm going to hold it until our next agenda item for the MXR1. But considering that this is specifically to our agricultural district, it is limited to those lots that are 5 acres or larger. I think it does a nice job of increasing density, providing some additional options to those property owners, while also maintaining rural character. We're talking about accessory units on very large lots. So I'm happy to support this evening. Any other questions or topics? Otherwise, I think we're ready for a motion.
I'll move that we adopt ordinance 719. Ordinance amending title, what is that, 15? Land usage, chapter 153 zoning code related to the inclusion of accessory dwelling units in the agricultural zoning district.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and motion carries. All right, very similar to our last agenda item, we are going to move on to 7D, which is consideration of ordinance 720, which is a repeal and replace of our current zoning code related to our MXR1 district. Just similar to the last, we will have Abby present staff presentation, initial questions from council, open up public hearing, and then bring back to council for consideration. With that, Abby, the floor is yours.
Thank you again, Mayor Bain, City Council. After the city had adopted the 2040 comprehensive plan, the City Council, along with the EDA, the Economic Development Authority, and the Planning Commission, met in 2021 to talk about changes to the comprehensive plan so that the city was more in conformance with the future land use map. So as a reminder, and for those that are thrilled to watch this at home, the future land use map is our guiding document, and that sets forth the densities that certain areas of the community need to be. And in combination, all of those densities average out to where we need to be as a community in terms of our overall density range. The existing low to medium density residential future land use requires that properties developed in those areas have a density of 3 to 6 units per acre. This is predominantly zoned MXR1, and currently the MXR1's minimum lot area is 15,000 square feet. We're not even achieving the 3 units per acre that we're supposed to achieve. So since 2021 and through some time into 2022, the city really had many conversations regarding the MXR1, but in August of 2022, I started a series of working discussions with the City Council, the EDA, and the Planning Commission to bring forth the development of the draft ordinance that's before you tonight. Again, as I mentioned, the regulatory framework for zoning text amendments requires that they need to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, that there's no conflict with the existing zoning code, or that it's in kind of cohesion with the existing zoning code, and that there's some general public benefit. As I noted, the comprehensive plan says these areas must have a density of 3 to 6 units per acre. As I explained, our minimum lot size in the MXR1 is 15,000 square feet. So even as it's proposed, we're not meeting that 3 units. I even included in my staff report several different developments that we've approved in the recent past. A really good example is our Chestnut Creek neighborhood. Those were properties that had a minimum square footage of 7,700 square feet, so right around where this proposal is. And that had a density of 1.9 units per acre. It's hard to achieve the 3.6 units per acre. And part of that has to do is the developable land area will include your right-of-way, your parks. So if there's more roads, more parks, it might bring that land area down some, or that density average down some. With regard to the zoning code, the intent of a zoning code really is to have uniform pattern development in specific zoning districts. You break out your city into zoning districts as the map is behind me, and you say, these are gonna be areas we'll have industrial, these are areas we'll have commercial, these are high-density residential, low-density residential. And when something is zoned MXR1, and we have several different pockets of MXR1 throughout the community, there's an assumed predictability that the neighborhoods in those zoning districts would have like characteristics. Unfortunately, those kind of like characteristics haven't always been consistently and evenly applied throughout the community. I've noted that in the staff report as well, that over the last 10 to 15 years, we've kind of really varied in that MXR1, and one neighborhood might be allowed 7,000 square foot lots, and another one might be required to have 12,000. That neighborhood consistency is really important to help preserve property values. It really helps in the long run everybody understand what is the development opportunity here and how will this be maintained in the future. Be that in the northwest corner where we have of the city where we have MXR1, or to the south of Highway 97 where MXR1 is slated for. Additionally, a note in the staff report that we've had an average of just under 7,200 square feet of lot area for our developments. This proposal is proposing a minimum of 7,500 square feet for each new lot created in the MXR1. The proposal also encourages or recommends a minimum lot width of 65 feet, where we've kind of been averaging about 67 feet. On a 65-foot wide lot, staff and the Planning Commission are proposing 7.5-foot setbacks. It would require a 15-foot separation between two buildings. This is at the high end of the average. We have been historically providing or requiring the setbacks as low as 5 feet. Staff asserts that that is very narrow. That is potentially a public safety concern, whereas 7.5 with 15 between two structures still allows for property owner access on both sides, but might actually prohibit or eliminate some of that outside storage we sometimes see in those side yards. Overall, there is a general public benefit. Again, that neighborhood characteristic consistency, the retention of property values throughout the community, And then also on one, it really helps our development community have some predictability. For staff like me to come in and say, okay, this is an MNXR1 district, some districts have been allowed this and some have been allowed this. This gives everyone an even development playing field. As Mayor Bain indicated, this is a repeal and replace. There were a few other areas of the code that we're just cleaning up. One of the other things that we're trying to do is simplify the look of our zoning code. You'll start to see the zoning code shift. There's a lot of narrative. We describe our maximum height or minimum lot areas all in words, not nice little pretty tables. And so as we keep updating the zoning code, you'll see me start to move towards a table-based code. It's just a lot easier for us to read in the long run. So this repeal and replace would help just clean that up, and I think that's a general public benefit as well. Overall, the findings are it is consistent with the comp plan. There's no conflict with the zoning code, and there is a general public benefit. So both the Planning Commission and staff recommend the City Council approve ordinance number 720, repealing or replacing the land usage, chapter 153, section 320, mixed residential, single family, and townhouse district.
Thank you, Abby. And we will bring conversation back to council. Initial rounds of questions, any clarifying points council needs at this point before we open up for public comment and public hearing?
Madam Mayor, the only comment I'd have to make about it is that it seems to be kind of the demand for this sort of thing, and you see it in other cities. I mean, I like to stay with the larger lots, but the demand is there, and I've seen several projects like that.
Yeah.
You know, they're pretty close together, and it seems to be that people aren't involved in big lots anymore.
Right.
So I would certainly support this change, so.
Yeah, to that point around lots of demand for it, I hear a lot of public concern around our number of multifamily housing units that we have in the community, and this is a natural assistance to that provides a lower price point and provides perhaps some opportunities for families to be in single-family homes rather than multifamily. And I think that diversity of our housing stock is important. And so we also, I've heard anecdotally and have just seen myself that we have, there's a lot of demand in other communities for these lot sizes. And so to prevent us from being skipped over, I think this is just part of what we need to do to kind of evolve. So happy to, any other comments at this point? Otherwise we'll have another round of comment as well as we consider final after public hearing. All right, so with that, let's open up public hearing. If there's anybody that would like to speak on this topic, please consider now. And Karen, I'm assuming still nobody online?
No one online.
All right, we'll hold for just a moment. And is there anybody that would like to speak on public hearing related to the MXR1 district repeal and replace? Repeal and replace. Not seeing anyone step forward, we'll close public hearing and bring conversation back to council. Council, for your consideration, any additional comments, questions?
I just like to applaud the work of the staff and planning commission. I mean, this has been a topic for quite some time and a long time coming. And I think it's to your point about development. I mean, it creates that level playing field. And we've been dropping the square footage anyway for developments. I mean, it just makes sense to have it available. And I mean, new housing start, I think the price point's over 400,000. So that's not, a way to attract a lot of new families, but this could hopefully drive that down. So I'm really grateful for the work.
Well, you can't have a zone that says you gotta have 3 to 6 units in it, but then require 15,000 square feet per acre.
Right.
Or 3 to 6 units per acre, and it requires 15,000 foot lot. The math doesn't work.
Not so much.
So,
Other questions, comments? As I was reviewing through and kind of considering the accessory dwelling unit conversation that we just added to the agricultural district, I'd be open to us considering accessory dwelling units in the MXR1 district as well. Detached, I think attached are currently allowed. And so I'd like to, I know that this is kind of an evolution and we're kind of dipping our toe in the water with what we're doing with the agricultural district. But because so many of our lot sizes in the MXR1 are already large, it seems like there would be room with some very specific requirements on size, some very specific setback and screening requirements that we could potentially accommodate them. It seems to be a thing of the future. And I would like to see us move into that direction. Obviously, I'm happy to support what we're doing tonight with the MXR1, but would like to, challenge staff and our planning commission to see if there's a path towards accessory dwelling units in this district as well, because I just think that the market demand for it's just going to continue to grow.
With that, I'd make a motion that we adopt ordinance 720, the repeal and place Title 15, Chapter 153, Section 320, regarding the MX1 district.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and motion carries. Next on our agenda is item 7E, which also has a public hearing this evening, and that is for consideration of ordinance 721, which is also a repeal and replace related to parks, lakes, and trails. And Abby, I think you're walking us through this.
Thank you, Mayor Bain. City Council, as Mayor Bain had noted, this is another ordinance intended to repeal and replace an existing section of the code. In 2015, the city adopted an ordinance that intended to disband the powers of the former park board. However, at that time, the intent was to create a commission that was advisory and define where the authority really lied. Unfortunately, the existing ordinance that we have in place today still has quite a bit of text which implies that the Parks, Trails, Lakes Commission has some board powers. Earlier this fall, we had several members of the commission resign, and we took the opportunity to review the ordinance to see how can we not only correct the errors from 2015, but strengthen the ordinance to really help better define not only that commission, their roles and responsibilities, but also to those of staff. As noted, I think in the staff report, and just as a refresher for everybody up on the dais, our Parks Department isn't really a department, it's a division that some of the functions are in Public Works and some of the functions are in-house in community development. And so really having a strong system of defining those roles of both the commission and both of the divisions or departments at the City Hall, staff felt was important in the ordinance amendment. I've said that this might be one of those ordinances that don't hang out for a long time, that we, in a few years, we maybe don't need this much structure in here. But because of some of the transitions that we're in right now, it made sense to draft some of that in. Unlike the zoning code, this is housed in just the general city code. There's no regulatory framework, however, general best practices to find that there is public good and public benefit in the adoption of the ordinance. So the ordinance goes through the Park and Recreation Commission definition. So this is probably the most substantial change that the council may see. Currently, the title of the commission is Parks, Trails, and Lakes. Park and Recreation Commission does encompass parks, trails, open space, and facilities. So by definition, where we see the word park, it is encompassing all of the system. The dropping of the word lakes was intentional. It doesn't mean that lakes is not important to the city of Forest Lake. However, the Parks Commission, the city has evolved in a way that our partnerships with the lakes, both associations and watershed districts, it's done through a variety of other different programs and departments. So during land use review with the city's community development staff, engineering and utilities and streets with stormwater management, and just general programming. There is a lot of park land development that happens around the lakes. We've had inquiries for putting in public improvements that would extend into the lake. All of those things would still be done in conjunction with the Park Commission, Park and Recreation Commission. Additionally, in the ordinance by definition, recreation, not only, it includes programmed recreation generally from our recreation partners, FLA, the school district, other types of youth sports organizations, YMCA, but also includes events that really those programming does take a look at events sponsored by the city, developed by the city, but also those that are developed by private organizations that are offering them for the public in our facilities, trying to help create a better programming system that has that diversity of services that the community needs and is looking for. The last major change that the council will see is that the member, still a 7-member commission, has 2 seats reserved, one for a representative of the school district and one as a representative of FLA, the Forest Lake Area Athletic Association. The intent for these was to pull these 2 very strong partners to the table with the city. So there's a couple of reasons for this. One is it helps reduce some redundancy within just the community programming endeavors. We've got different types of athletic committees that staff has been involved in, and it really just brings that conversation right to the commission. It can really help reduce just that overall, improve communication more than anything. The other one was really to holistically balance the system. There are parks and trails and recreation facilities on public land and private land, school district land, and really bringing the school district into the table in the conversation really helps us weigh those private requests we get. I think sitting in parks programming right now and maybe in Dave's world are inquiries for fencing at Cooling Camp, and we're weighing fencing at Cooling Camp against a sand volleyball court at, so it's really bringing everybody to the same table to look at what is best for the system as a whole, what are the needs for the system, and having those conversations publicly together at the dais. So staff does believe that there is a general public benefit good to repealing and replacing the existing parks, trails, lakes ordinance and replacing it with the Park and Recreation Commission ordinance, and would recommend you review it, again, hold a public hearing, and after discussion, staff's recommendation is that you would move to approve the ordinance in front of you. That's ordinance 721.
Thank you, Abby. As we previously done, let's maybe do a quick round of questions, comments from council, if there's any, and then we'll open up for public hearing. Any initial comments, questions from council?
I don't know, maybe just from background on exactly, I've heard reasons potentially why we had a mass, people leaving that department or that commission, and just, the valued people. I know a lot of those folks that are very involved in the community, and I think that, there was a reason that happened. So whether this is approved or not, like, to have that continued feedback from that commission and not take too much. The more eyes you have on something, the better, and I just think that that's a concern of mine going forward. And really, in the past, what happened and why have we reached out to any of those folks as to being involved in this new ordinance, both the ones that had resigned and the 2 that remained on are willing to remain on that? Have they been brought into the conversation? Were they part of this change at all? And just some questions like that is really what I have.
To address Commissioner Rabbit's specific inquiry, staff did not reach out to former commission members with regard to this ordinance. I have had one-on-one conversations with former members, not all of them individually, just about concerns, but we did not include them in the drafting of this ordinance.
And I think the intent of the ordinance clears up some of the reasons why some of those resignations may happen. I think that, as Abby mentioned before, that it was unclear where the duties were supposed to be and who was supposed to be doing what and where the responsibilities were. I think this will prevent any of those misgivings and misunderstandings or misdirections. I think this will identify to the new members of this commission what their duties and responsibilities, but also, as Abby said, it'll recognize what staff's duties and responsibilities are. It's a cleaner way to do things. It puts everything in black and white so everybody knows where the delineation marks are.
I can speak, just personally also on this, you know, as we kind of looked at what's happened over the last 6 months and kind of what's worked well, what's not worked well, what do we need going forward? I think a lot of focus has been, let's set the deck so that it's what's needed, and so we're able to resolve some of those concerns. And then as it relates to, so once we've got, you know, new commission scope, roles clearly identified, then it kind of comes back to then, you know, how do we fill those seats? And if there are members that had previously served that are interested in the new role, happy to consider those applications, happy to have those conversations. I've had conversations with a number of them already, those that had resigned, and then the 2 remaining have continued to express, you know, interest in continuing. But I don't think the door's closed to anybody. I think this is just an opportunity first of like, let's clarify what's the role, let's clarify what it is we're doing, how is that commission made up. One of the things that has, I think, made this challenging is over the years, scope has changed. Like, we've recently brought in the senior center into kind of under closer city control. The golf course has been brought into closer city control, and we then threw in for a period of time, what are we going to do with lakes, and what does that relationship look like? And as we've kind of taken each of those components and tried to find the right place, the natural place for them over time has been considering what's, you know, maybe this should be all parks, lakes, and trails. And now that we've seen things settle down a little bit, we've got a better idea of what needs commission oversight versus what's a staff role. And even at the staff level, is that parks? Is that public works? And I think now we're at a spot where we're ready to codify and put into action a lot of those feedback points that have happened over the last couple of years. And so I'm happy to support this as, like, from a policy perspective, the next best step. And then once we've kind of set the deck, then it's, all right, who's interested in coming to the table? And I think that's our next, you know, action after, you know, getting through the ordinance this evening and kind of setting up the new commission. It's my perspective.
When you say closer, bringing it closer to control, what do you mean by that? Less from commissions and more
No,
staff and council?
Yeah. So great clarification. When I say bring closer to control, so previously the senior center has been an affiliation of the city. We've owned the city center building, but we haven't, you know, if you were to look 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there wasn't a lot of staff coordination, and that has changed over the last couple of years. Similar to maybe the golf course, there was a contractual relationship, but the previous Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission, and the kind of the management of that golf course, we've just had a lot more kind of city visibility to those things. And as that's happened, we've learned, you know, what's working, what's not working, and what is the role of staff and what's the role of the commission. I think just trying to clarify those lanes has been, and the lack of clarity of those lanes has just created a lot of confusion and frustration on everyone's part. And so I think the goal for this is to provide, and it's partly why we go as specific in an ordinance as essentially defining job descriptions. We don't do this in other areas, but I think it's maybe the next needed step. To Abby's point, maybe this is just an interim ordinance that gets us to the next place, but I think it's needed.
So then does this envision like a commission looking over different agreements with the golf course or boat club, different? Is that they still piece of that, or is that just going to go to staff and then
It would
the
be,
council?
it would be staff, you know, whether or not the council would like the commission looking over agreements, but generally speaking, advisory commissions aren't involved in negotiations such as agreements, especially ones that would involve any sort of long-term contract or exchanging of funds. Right now, the current ordinance does allow for that. Those were those old park board powers, but generally speaking, advisory commissions do not have that role. Staff would work directly with these applicants or landowners or whomever it may be to work out refining that agreement and bringing that, because ultimately this council is the one that enters into agreement with matters affecting city land.
On that point, maybe that's worth a little bit more discussion, and maybe that Patrick and Abby, if you can kind of fill in some of those specific, could you just maybe list through some of those specific contracts that you would expect to come to kind of staff to council? I think just walking through those.
Well, I think
Helpful.
obviously one's the golf course, that's under a 5-year contract, that'll come right to council. Senior Center really doesn't have a contract, they have their own advisory board to the staff member at that. Anything that would have to do with, well, you see all the time, you see some of the contracts for some of the events at the Lakeside Park, that's kind of perfunctory, really probably doesn't need to come, that's in my own, but any major contract, if we hire a contractor for renovating a park, for example, that'll come to council. I'm sure that there'd be some input on the parks and trails, but really the big ones are the golf course. I don't think there's.
Your Boat Club would be
Oh,
the
your
other
boat club, yes,
predominant one.
thank you. Would be also something to come to council.
One of the things, just to follow up, Mayor Bain and Council, is after this is done, we are working internally with a special events team to look at, I mentioned this at your last meeting, to just look at event permitting and review processes, just how we can streamline it, how we can reduce redundancy. And as part of that, we will have to have a new ordinance affecting special events. That will help give more clarification to where would maybe the Park and Recreation Commission have outright authority to issue, or staff approve a permit upon consultation of that commission, or which ones would come before you. So you'll still continue to see some policy-based documents that will help kind of keep refining these roles between staff, the commission, and the council. Especially when we talk about things like park use and alcohol in parks and events and all that kind of stuff. I mentioned in the last meeting, we haven't revisited a lot of that stuff in a long while, and we need to.
This whole thing, to me, has to be an evolving, constant review to keep things on the up and up, because things are you're constantly changing. And so I would want to make sure that this ordinance is kind of a living document, that if the park board or the new board has some recommendations for changes, that we should be able to look at that. And certainly along the way, if things change, to look at it again. So I don't, when you put something cut in stone, we want to make sure that there's some flexibility there to change it along the way, or fix it. At least fix it if it needs fixing, so.
One of the things too that I think is important to how this new ordinance is set up is the relationship with FLA. So there was a time when our current ordinance, under our current ordinance, where we gave that organization the exclusive right to, and the exclusive use of Fenway. And over time, that has since changed. And previous to that, we had a Fenway Advisory Committee that was made up of Public Works, Parks, members of City Council, and members of our Park Board all kind of met to meet in this Fenway Advisory Committee. And now that that relationship has changed and evolved, there's kind of still been this hole of what is the right channel for that feedback to come in. FLA is still an amazing partner of ours. They are a significant user of major city resources, but there's been this place of needing to have a working group that hasn't quite landed in a great spot that's working for everyone. And so I think one of the things I like about the new ordinance is having them have a designated seat at this table. Provides that oversight. They are, again, a major partner. Similar comments around the school district and kind of the shared facilities that we share, and we share some services. Having them as a named, both of those organizations as a named resource, I think just clarifies the lines of communication, clarifies the role, and just gives them the appropriate seat at the table so that there's just kind of clarity on what the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. And I think we had the previous structures had worked, but the relationships have changed, and so we were left with this kind of gap in how we were structured to manage the new relationship structure. And so I hope that this kind of brings that closer together.
So just to reiterate, I fear, my concern is just, if people are willing to put the time in and volunteer for these commissions and that, to value that input, I think is really important. And what happened the previous boards, it's unfortunate. And I think that things could have ended differently, I think, if there would have been a little bit, hopefully this clears this up. But we just need to value those people, because the more eyes on it, the better. If the Castlewood Clubhouse would have went in front of this commission, it maybe would have been a different outcome than it was. And again, more eyes, the better to direct going forward.
Good input. Other comments, thoughts? We will have another opportunity after public hearing, and so if there's nothing that's burning right this second, let's take a moment here. Well, with that, we'll open up the public hearing on the new ordinance 721. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this topic? Welcome.
Thank you. Karen Moorhead, 943 Southeast 12th Avenue. I wasn't planning on speaking, I was planning on listening, but after listening, I found out that had we been approached, and it's good that the community knows now that 5 out of 7 of the commissioners resigned. That shows there's a problem. That's 5 individual people who saw something that should be changed. And yet I hear tonight problems that we had to change this because of this, and it's going to be nice and clear now, whatever. I went to put some of those problems out there, but there are others that were neglected because nobody chose to ask why any of the 5 individuals, not the former chair, not any of the commissioners, what the problem was. So to me, if you're going to have staff lead a commission to fix something that was broken by a commission, it doesn't make any sense, because there are other things that should have been brought up and talked about. I was glad to see that you said the commission would still be open for other people to be on, but unless you give people more credit for the work and the time that they put in, I don't know who'd want to be silly enough to sit there. Because if the power is going to be here, and we're only to, I don't even know at the end what we were there to do, but to show up if we had a meeting, of which there were many canceled. Now I start to vent. But anyway, I'm just thinking that there were some things that could have been changed. This whole outcome could have been differently had they been asked for an opinion. And I don't know who all you people said you talked to, because I know I ran into Abby once, and that's the only person that had reached out to ask me for anything about the whys and the wheres of what happened. And I haven't talked to any of the commissioners that were approached either. So it seems to me that it was a good time to get rid of those people and put on new people, take a lot more control from the city, and take a few seats away from the community, because you said 2 are going to be for FLA and the school, which means 5 are now left for the community. And my job, I always thought, because I love this community so much, my job was to be the eyes and ears of the community, and then bring those suggestions, or when things come up that we would then be approached because we're out in the community so much. And that would have worked if, when we brought those things to the commission, there would have been work done on them. But if you just bring the ideas from the community or the suggestions for things that could be changed or could be added, and then it's just dropped, that doesn't make anyone feel welcome, doesn't feel anyone feel important. And so you'll do what you do, and if the new commission gets off, if anybody still wants to reach out, a little late, but there are things that we could help with. And I can see those 2 seats already being taken care of on the commission, because we dealt with FLA all the time. We fixed up a lot of problems. We dealt with the city. So why they actually have to have a community spot on that board or that commission, I don't know, because we dealt with them all the time. And yes, FLA had a little thing there as far as who was in control, but we fixed that. And I don't know that commission or that group that you were talking about, where they had the FLA committee, that was still going on as far as I know. And so again, it was an opportunity for more voices to be heard. And That's what I always think. The more voices, the better. The more power from the bottom, the better. The least power from the top is better, because we are all in this together, but there's a lot of people out in the community that have good ideas, and they should be listened to, and they should be acknowledged. So, thank you for your time.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this topic? And hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring conversation back to council. Council, questions or further discussion?
So on the point of naming someone from the school district and FLA, will they be required to be residents of the city? So is it an employee of the school district, but then would have to be a resident of the city?
No, because the school is bigger than the city boundaries or outside of the city boundaries, as FLA does take in people outside of Forest Lake. So we thought it best just to get a representative from those organizations itself. They could be residents, but it's not mandatory, because I believe it would be difficult in some cases to find some, so.
That does make it a little more difficult to me, but I can see, I can understand the issue there. You know, the school district takes care of what it does in the communities, and that's part of the problem.
And I think, so my perspective on being able to support that is that in that role, they are serving and speaking for the school district as a whole, they're speaking for FLA as a whole. I can appreciate that within either of those organizations. I mean, our superintendent doesn't live in Forest Lake. Many of school administration doesn't live in Forest Lake. And the person who might be best for either one of those organizations at any one point in time may not physically be a resident. And if the goal is representation of the organization, it's an area where personally I can support them having that seat, because again, the seat is for
It
the
might be just a
organization.
conversation we need to have for all the commissions.
I agree, and we have,
for-
yes,
For good reason.
right.
The airport commission would be one of them, because they would be representing one little core area.
Right.
And so that'd be the same thing with the parks area too. So that conversation might have to take place.
Yeah.
So,
Other points of feedback, question?
So I'm a little hesitant on that. Just, I'm all about partnering up, and I think it's good, because those are two main partners. But to Mrs. Moorhead's point, it does take that from the community members and their input on a commission like this.
Thoughts on that is, I mean, we can, if that is I mean, we have an opportunity to table and revise, we can,
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I mean, if you could change the wording to even put a preference, I mean, like, I don't know, I like the idea of, I mean, yeah, the district is, gosh, I mean, one of the biggest in the state, but it would be nice to have somebody who's more tied into Forest Lake rather than living as far, long ways away.
I'm not so sure that the school system would have to be involved at all. Now that I think about it. That was a high-pitched squeal you heard there. That was my brain, but, seriously, I mean, they represent, a dozen different communities with all the different programs and things, and I'm not so sure that we would require their input in our own parks. My opinion.
I think that the high school district, or the school district, is an important part of this whole matrix. We have a very close relationship with the school district. They do some of the scheduling, most of the scheduling for us. They do identify a lot of the field maintenance or prep for some of the fields. They let us know if fields are available with them or not with them. So it's really a real close relationship. Now, if you're considering removing the school district and opening up a seat to the community, that's fine, but what I would amend the ordinance to make them at least a representative on the board, maybe non-voting.
non-voting.
Their input is very important. I mean, we work very close with them. It's very necessary, no matter what the opinions are, whether it's community or not. It's a very important part of this whole piece.
How has it worked up to this point under the current structure? I mean, that partnership, like to put them on this board or this.
The
commission?
partnership between the staff members of the board have been great. Part of the reason this ordinance is here is because of the difficulties we've been having trying to coordinate all this and getting it before, I mean, this is why this is here. And the thought was that we have two real good partners, one FLA that does most of the athletics, or a big majority of the athletics, and they should be at the table. Mostly Forest Lake residents that participate, but there are others. And the school district, which is a very close partner with us, they've been very cooperative. Have great suggestions for us. We've worked very closely with them in the last year. I mean, this is all starting to come together more and more every day as we see what we need. And I think you should consider the Forest Lake High School part of the community, as a member of the community, as FLA. I mean, they may not be an individual part of the community, but they're an organization that's part of the community. That's just that's how close this has to be, and this is how close both of those organizations are to the success of the recreational programming.
Well, yeah, I mean, I certainly agree that the high school and, I mean, middle school, I mean, they're definitely part of the community. I just, if we're talking about a Forest Lake District member, and we're opening it up to anybody and everybody, is it gonna be somebody that's tied then to Forest Lake?
Well,
Whether
I can't
they
tell you that
reside
they're going
here
to
or
be
not.
tied as far as residency goes.
No,
But I believe that looking at the success of both FLA and the high school, they have the best interest of Forest Lake and the community in mind. And since this is a seven-member board, you're going to have 5 members from the community individually appointed. It's only 2 other members that, they don't have, it's not a sway of a vote, it's not a majority of a vote, it's just 2 extra members out of it. So you'll have 5 community members and 2 community organizations that have the best, in my opinion, the best interest of Forest Lake residents in mind when they approach anything that they do.
If I
Go
could
ahead.
chime in.
Yeah, please.
I guess thinking out loud, it's a super interesting topic, and then knowing that there's the 2 from the school and FLA that would potentially not be living in Forest Lake. I guess thinking about that, I like the preference idea, Leif, that you threw out, because as a person who drafts ordinances and laws in my full-time job, laws are an evolving document. And so really just thinking about what is beneficial for the community right now, it can always be changed if things aren't working well. Knowing that we have a good relationship with FLA and the school, I'm kind of inclined to keep those positions on the Parks and Rec Commission, simply because to make it stronger. And even though they might not be a part of living in the community, I have a hard time with that, but also I don't, because it makes me think of, a couple examples, employees here. Not everyone here lives in Forest Lake, right? But they still have the best interest in the community. Similar for me working at a government, I live an hour and 40 minutes away from that community. I draft their bills. I work there because I'm passionate about that community and changing and just benefiting that community. So I have to believe that people who serve on FLA and people who are working in the schools that are within this community, that they would have the best interest in the park system in this community. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here and they wouldn't be volunteering for that position. So I think I think it would be a change. It would be a hard change, but I wouldn't discredit that those people wouldn't have the best interest in that community, because I don't think you necessarily have to. I think it's always beneficial, right, for someone to live in a community, but you don't always have to live in a community in order to want improvements, to see growth, and to put your energy into that community to make sure that it ends up being something positive, so. Sorry, that was long, but
Okay.
a lot was happening up there.
It was good, though. Appreciate it.
Excuse me, Mayor, how many times can one person talk in a public hearing?
So we've closed public hearing, but I'm happy to hear you, I'm happy to hear you again if you'd like to approach.
Sorry, I missed that closing.
You can approach again if you'd like.
I appreciate it, because since I've
But will
got-
you come to the mic though, so that we can all hear?
This is a great example of what I said, making a problem when there isn't one. And I'm sitting here hearing Mr. Casey talk about, we got to have a better relationship, we got a good one with the school now, we got a good one with FLA, and how important they are to us, as if we didn't know that. We all knew that. We worked very well with the school. I would like to see someone stand up and tell me where one problem has been that the commission hasn't worked well with the school. I don't know what it is, and I attended 99% of all the meetings. This is one of the things that could have been cleared up had they been asked to give an opinion on what was wrong and what wasn't wrong. It's gotten way out of hand with, do they have to be residents? Do they have to, whatever? I don't even know why that's in the conversation. The people that are in FLA in our school are great people, whether they live here or not. That's not the point. They already have a position. They're in the club, in the FLA group. They work for the school. We work with both of them very, very well. And so with this conversation now of why we had to change the ordinance, it's going to make it clearer and all that, it just boggles my mind because I see that there's problems being presented here that were never problems with the commission. And it's too bad that someone didn't reach out and figure that out. But it's certainly not, don't make your decision on whether or not FLA in the school are having a problem with the commission. It just wasn't there.
Thank you.
I don't know that anybody was questioning that. I mean, certainly wasn't questioning that. I was just wondering about, what the legalities of some of this stuff
And
but, making it right. And after hearing the conversations here, yeah, based on the conversations I've been hearing, I'd make a motion that we adopt ordinance 721 and repeal and replace Title III, Chapter 31, Section 31.75 through Section 31.77 regarding parks, trails, and lakes, according to commission, according to Abby.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
So just to clarify, so that is requiring one representative from both?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah,
Okay.
the way it is, the way it's presented. I wanted to hear the argument.
Yeah. So I'm happy to support this evening. This is an evolution, and I believe this document and this ordinance gets us a step, many steps in the right direction and helps to clear up just, every time we have a major change, we kind of go back to, okay, what are the words on the page and what do our documents say? This update gets us much closer to where we need to go, so I'm happy to support it. But also, this is an evolution, and I really like Abby's perspective on this, that this may be a short-lived to a bridge to where we are going, but kind of in this time where we have this opportunity for a reset, and I think it's kind of our next best step. So for that, I'm happy to support it tonight. Any other comments? With that, we have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Nay.
And motion carries. All right, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is 7G, I'm sorry, 7F, which is our 2023 local street improvement projects. And Ryan.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Tonight, we have a formal request to the City Council for approval of plans and specs and authorize advertisement for bids for the 2023 street improvement project. On the second page of your council packet shows the location of the project that's being planned for the 2023 construction season. But city has budgeted $1,175,000 for the project. Bid opening is scheduled for February 21st. All work would be completed in 2023. If there's not any specific questions, tonight we're looking for formal approval of the plans and specs and authorize ad for bid for the 2023 street improvement project.
Thank you, Ryan. Council, any questions for Ryan this evening? Ryan's memo kind of outlines next steps and the schedule for, that is upcoming.
Yeah, what we're asking for is bids, so that's a pretty simple situation, so therefore I'd make a motion that we approve the plan specifications authorization and authorize ads for bid for the 2023 project to the tune of $1,175,000.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And motion carries. All right, our next item is item 7G, which is board and commission appointments. Council, before you, you have 2 additional appointments that I'm asking for your consideration. One is for Chris Hoyt to join a 5-year term, taking the seat that was formerly held by Leif Erickson for our EDA. That does leave us with 1 remaining EDA position open. I have a couple of active conversations related to that. And so we'll hope to have that EDA position, EDA fully filled by our next meeting. But right now for consideration tonight is Chris Hoyt. And then second, Jeff Larson, who many of you will remember we appointed at our last meeting to the EDA. He is open to a dual track and considering positions on both the EDA and the Planning Commission. He was a candidate for city council, had kind of mentally, I think, wanted to serve more and is happy to serve in both roles. We have had this happen before. We have a current member of the Airport Commission who is also serving on the Planning Commission. And so it is not the first time we've done this, and I think he'd be a great addition. So with that, I would also nominate Jeff Erickson for a 3-year term to the Planning Commission, taking the seat that was formerly held by Mike Keene. And that would mean, if my math is holding still, that we would then have a full Planning Commission. With that, I would move for council adoption. Is there a second?
I'll second it. I'll second.
Second.
Sorry.
Further discussion, questions, thoughts? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And motion carries. All right, we do have a discussion item on tonight's agenda for workshop consideration. As we move into this discussion, just a note that we are done with our formal action agenda. This is a workshop session. Anything we discuss in this session that requires official action will come before council in a formal meeting. And with that, we can move into a discussion on plowing, shoveling of downtown sidewalks. Patrick?
Yes, I think there was an interest expressed by council members regarding the possibility of us, the city, plowing downtown sidewalks, but also with more recent snowstorms, just overall looking at what the plowing policy was. We do have a policy that looks at snow removal, plowing of sidewalks, not plowing of sidewalks, excuse me. Residents' and business responsibilities for clearing their sidewalks, and then generally how we plow streets. So without anything more to present, I think we should start with council questions and what you as a board or individually would like to know, and give us some guidance on if we need to respond on any particular or specific matter.
Thank you, Patrick. Should we start with the question maybe around kind of just topic, I guess, not question, but topic of downtown sidewalks in particular? Should we start with that?
Yeah.
So can maybe Dave or Patrick, can you kind of fill us in on what the city currently does downtown around just snow and ice removal in general? And whether that's, and if you could cover kind of street sidewalks, just give us an overview.
Yep, so the city follows its snow and ice control policy, so we remove snow from our city streets, the municipal lot, which is city-owned, and the properties in which the city owns of sidewalks. So there's a corner of the roundabout, and there's a select few sidewalks on the backside of Lake Street that we maintain as part of when the parking lot was rehabbed. We have an agreement that we maintain partial of them. Lake Street itself is maintained by MnDOT, Minnesota Department of Transportation, and the roundabout is shared by Washington County, as they have Broadway Avenue, that's a Washington County road, and then MnDOT has Lake, so sometimes it's a dual purpose on them. The other sidewalks downtown we do not touch except for the berm removals. We do that, I'd say approximately once a month, and that gets partially reimbursed by the state of Minnesota. They have a Clear Roads Fund, basically, and they reimburse us for the staff time on the operator and the equipment to get the snow off the street. They don't pay us for hauling it out, so a little over half we get reimbursed for. And then the trucking, we can either ask them for help or we just do it ourselves and just don't get reimbursed. So like last year, we didn't remove snow once from downtown because of the year with no snow. And this year, we did it, I think like December 30th, right before New Year's Eve. And then hopefully if we don't get snow this week, we will be doing it Thursday night into Friday morning.
When you say berm removals, is that just the cleanup between the sidewalk and the street? Is that what you're, with the
Big pile of
plows?
snow that kind of forces cars out into the driving lanes. And that's why MnDOT kind of does that reimbursement, because they don't have time to do all these little stretches of area in the state, you know, so they kind of kick back cities some money just to do it for them.
Thank you. So, questions, comments, kind of topics of conversation? Go ahead, Blake.
So, I initiated this in an email before being actually seated, and we'd just gotten through the downtown study and talked about more of a walkable downtown and this just, not knowing the actual cost associated to doing sidewalks seems like an easy, low-hanging fruit to be able to provide just more safety for residents and that more welcoming downtown. We've got, from what I can tell, there's equipment and there's manpower that's pretty much in downtown, so it doesn't seem like it'd be a lot more to clear that, but you would obviously have a better number on that than I would, and I get that's just more work, but that just, in my opinion, seems like other downtowns are doing it, and I get that the policy overall is if it's on the property owner throughout the city, but in certain areas, it seems like you could make exceptions, like we do have other exceptions for downtown, is different settled ordinances and rules and that whatnot.
So the one thing, the policy is following the ordinance. So there's actually a city ordinance that property owners remove the snow. So the policy isn't creating that. We're just restating it in the policy that city ordinance requires that. I think a big issue with removing snow or sidewalks is level of service. When we do our trails and property owner sidewalks and even property owners themselves, they have 12 hours to remove the snow. So if you're getting 6 inches of snow and it quits snowing at midnight and it's been snowing all day, I mean, technically we wouldn't have to remove the snow downtown until noon of the following day. So I mean, it's tricky that way, is that you're, all of a sudden, are you every half inch, are you going down there to broom the snow off and keeping it clear? That's the interesting. And a good example is the city center here. We used to do the snow removal at the city center and then at Anytime Fitness and the dollar store over there. We did that for 2 winters and they separated because we couldn't clear the sidewalks fast enough for them. They needed somebody there constantly cleaning them, and they hired a different company to do that. So it does sound as easy as just going up and down and making it pass, but it might be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, depending on what that level of service is. I'm sure the drugstore downtown doesn't want 8 inches of snow sitting there. I mean, they're probably shoveling constantly, and then someplace may not care, but how do you figure that out? I think that's where public works and private side get a little separated, where that level of service changes.
That's my concern on this topic, is just the level of service. I think as soon as we put it out there that the city is doing it, there's that expectation that the city's going to do it, and, we would have, I think, have to just think realistically on what does that actually cost and what does that mean to dedicate the team that's doing it, because that team that's doing it is also not doing it near the schools and not doing it in residential streets, and so there is a significant add to be able to provide the level of service. That said, I am concerned about our overall walkability. I try to walk our downtown almost every day, and there are many days where, especially after a snow, where you just can't. There are certain property owners that just haven't stopped or not maintained their sidewalks, and that's a problem. I personally, rather than us taking on the whole umbrella, I'd like to see us be more tougher on enforcement and maybe faster to have the contract with somebody who is going to clear it, and then we do the bill back to the property owner. You know, our businesses are incredibly important, but they also have mechanisms to recover those costs that residents just don't have. And so whatever we do downtown has, especially related to snow clearing, has an immediate impact to either we've funded it and charged for it, or it's an immediate impact to our residents, and nobody else is clearing those streets. And so that's my kind of concern is, if we're going to do it, that it's got to be fully funded so that we're hitting the right service level. And that's kind of the slippery slope, in my opinion, we start to get into. Other thoughts?
That even boils down to enforcing weed control in the summertime. Sometimes the weeds are this tall
That's
between
gonna
the
be the other.
sidewalk and the curb. It's
Right.
disgusting.
Right.
Yeah, I guess, you know, if there's a way, you know, one way to make downtown more walkable with, you know, kind of being able to some degree sidestep the level of service is just getting those berms out faster, and I don't know if that's feasible. I mean, we had that heavy snow the first week of January, and I still have clients, you know, climbing over them. And so maybe just simply as much as that, because I think when you guys did it at the end of December, there's one or two properties I can think of where their sidewalks finally got cleaned, right, just by default. And so maybe even focusing our efforts and energies there to tackle that, which is already partially reimbursed, kind of avoids that whole level of service issue, but still kind of moves us in the right direction from a level or from a walkability standpoint.
It does keep us also in the street and not onto the sidewalk, which is, I think, where.
Yep, I mean, that can definitely be increased. It still is the question of what takes priority. Does priority of the city removing the cul-de-sacs to make room for our next snowfall and, you know, snow blowing trails to make room for the plow truck to get through the next time? Or is it clearing the windrows downtown? You know, so we had the big storm last week, or we've been having multiple storms, so we finally get to that point of this week where, okay, I think we have all of our main issues caught up to where then we can do Lake Street. So it's another one of those trade-offs. I mean, we could, after every snowfall, clear Lake Street, but then the city streets, you know, and parking lots and all that are secondary then. So it's just a matter of how the council wants stuff prioritized. I mean, if the council wants the downtown to be prioritized, it can be prioritized, but other stuff will get pushed back. Unless you want to give me like 100 extra staff members, and then we can just get everything done and good to go.
Well, that is the long-term, I mean, that would have to be the long-term plan. I think it all has to be a priority. We talked about spending $35 million in our downtown, and we're contemplating spending, we don't know the number, to clear the sidewalks. And that berm, I assumed it was the state that was in charge of that, because it's a danger. I mean, cars are parked out into, I mean, you have to, right now, currently, if you go down there, you're using the turning lanes to navigate through downtown. That's dangerous. It's, in my opinion, not acceptable, to be honest with you. And I know it's not on you, it's just the current staffing and whatever, so the long-term plan, obviously something has to change, because it all has to be a priority.
Yeah, the biggest problem with staffing too, that I can see is one year no snow and then next year a whole bunch of snow. So how do you equalize that or, you know, level it off? So it's gonna be a big question. Yeah.
Also, going off that point, Sam, that was mentioned last week from Dave, that staffing is an issue. If there's one person who's gone, then more people have to do more work, so, there's only so much we can do. Ideally, all of it would be cleared, but there's not the staff there. So in my mind, we do what we can, and I trust that Dave knows what should be prioritized, and plan for the future, so.
I think that we can always look as budgetary. I mean, maybe we can't address it by the end of this winter, but if the council gives us the direction to look at what we have to do to solve the downtown issue, even if it's just the clearing of the berms, or that's different than doing sidewalks.
There's a lot of businesses that are doing just a really great job of clearing their sidewalks, and so, I hate to, they've figured out what works for them. They know what their staffing is, they know what their clientele needs, they're taking care of it, just like, I mean, what was frustrating for me in the last couple of weeks is many of our residential sidewalks, which historically is where we sometimes have some, they were in much better shape than our downtown, and so our residents are doing it, so I think we kind of need to hold everyone to that same standard. Is there something we can do that's contractual, that we are not taking, so Dave's not having to pick A for B? Is there something that we can do contractually that allows for a faster response that's charged back to that property owner that is
Two different
kind
items,
of
obviously.
meets the same,
Two different items, contractually for the berms and the.
not
okay.
berms, I mean
So-
for the sidewalks.
So what we'd have to do is to look at hiring a contractor to clear sidewalks and charge back to whatever the property owner is. We have to change our policy a little bit to allow us to do that. That's fairly straightforward to say, okay, we're going to clear your sidewalks if you don't.
Don't we have the ability to do that today?
We have we need to make it clearer, let's just put it that way.
Okay. Amanda's shaking her head.
And
no.
that would be, that would not only be for the business area, but the residential, because we get a lot of complaints on residential. We have a lot of complaints on the north side of Broadway that none of the businesses are gonna have, I mean, south side's great because it's a trail and the city takes care of it, it's clear. But the north side doesn't. So what that would take for us is to lay out some kind of a program that clears the sidewalks after, 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever the matrix is, and then send a bill to the property owner, and then for them to pay, and if they don't pay it, then you put it on their taxes like we do delinquent bills of other types. That's really the only solution we have.
Can that be done in a contract that's outside of, so it's not, again, taking away from what's happening in other districts? Can that be done as a separate contract
I'm
with?
sure we can hire a contractor we report the place and say, go do it, and they say, okay, here's the bill, is what we charge them. So, I'm sure there's a way. We have to, won't give you a 100% answer tonight, but we'll talk about it and see what Dave thinks, what Amanda thinks as far as the policy goes, and then how we charge them back, and have an answer for you the next meeting, I suppose.
I mean,
That's really the only way you're gonna do it, because if you really want the whole downtown and you want city staff to shovel the sidewalks, you're talking about a major budget impact and taking away or adding staff to do that on some type of basis that we haven't even begun to explore yet.
So just to clarify, you mentioned, so for a trail, so technically there's a trail on the south side of Broadway, and because that's designated a trail, that's being maintained by.
No, it's because it's wide enough, well, it's a trail, so it's maintained by the city, and it's wide enough to put a truck down it where the sidewalks are not.
Okay, so a Bobcat type situation, skid steer wouldn't work downtown?
Depending on the awnings, yeah. I think most of you could, the little John Deere tractor, you could probably squeeze through there, just maneuvering around those. I mean, they make sidewalk machines. I mean, how in-depth do you want to get, right?
Yeah.
There's cities that have more sidewalk crews than street crews, and they do hundreds of miles of sidewalks, but they have specialized equipment and can do it quick, but it's, whatever we want to get into, it all comes with a cost one way or the other.
I think that to the point on the concern about this level of service, the businesses that are doing it now are gonna continue to do it before and after the city goes through there. But for the vacant and empty buildings, that's really where the issue is. They're just not, those owners not around, and that's where the issue is. And so, I mean, I guess it would be just interesting to know what that, and we're not talking, you're not doing any hand work. I would say some kind of a smaller piece of equipment that would be able to do that. And obviously this year, it's probably not gonna happen, but put a number to that and, it's a budget.
Yeah, I think we could do that for next year's budget, but in tandem, we'll also look at charging those vacant properties, since most of the businesses do a decent job, getting a contract together for them to clear it and then a charge back to the property owner.
And,
I think the perception you run into too, if there is a vacant lot and then you see a City of Forest Lake truck there and a City of Forest Lake staff shoveling it, then you see another resident saying, well, why are they shoveling that person's sidewalk and I am out here shoveling my sidewalk? Sometimes the contractor, when you have a code violation, it's easier and cleaner to have a third party, a contractor do that work. They, give that invoice, they do the work, and it's charged back. It doesn't take staff time away from that. It's just a clean work from somebody else to do it. And it's a matter of creating an RFP and having a designated contractor to do that, and, whether it's someone in code enforcement or myself, giving them a list of addresses and they go out and clear those sidewalks. Like Patrick said, if it's a 24-hour trigger or 48-hour trigger, whatever trigger time that would be, they would have a list, and majority of the time it would be the same list, so they would know where they're going, and, they would just document and then charge back, and, we would pay that bill, and then it would get tacked onto their property tax or however that would go. But we did the same with Lawn Moine back in the early 2000s when we had those foreclosures, tons of foreclosures. We'd have to mow all those lawns.
Right.
So we hired a third-party contractor and every week we'd give them a list of houses that needed to be mowed, and they would mow it, invoice out, and then we would charge back. So it's pretty easy to do. You just get a contractor with a 24-hour number and you do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it's certainly a great first step, and, can continue to have the conversation as downtown develops, and, because, I mean, you're right, I mean, I work downtown, and my landlord does a great job of, having people come out. Now, I'm curious about the backside of our building. We're at 85 Lake Street North, right between Rolseth and, like by Sherco. And there's just this big asphalt lot, and sometimes it's cleared, and this year it hasn't been. And I don't know what if there's been conversation in the office that the city agreed to clean that off, and there's others that are like, it doesn't make any sense. And I don't know, sometimes it's empty, and sometimes, like this winter, it's not been. So I don't know if you're familiar with that blacktop spot that I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm familiar, so it should be getting cleared, so then that's just, I'll have to look into that.
Okay.
But, yeah, it's goofy how those lines are drawn, and it depends. So the municipal lot, we have a contractor clear that out, because we don't have the staff to try to get that whole lot, because they do Muni lot, Lone Oak, the Gone Building. We're responsible for clearing all those parking lots, and so we contract it out, and it could be as easy as there's just a new operator down there that didn't know that that's theirs, but we'll get that straightened out, because that should be cleared. If no one's clearing it, we should be clearing it then.
Yeah, it's not.
Yep.
Thanks. Well, it's been worth it.
So it sounds like, though, if we're going to head down this path on having some contract assistance in those clearings, that there is both is it an ordinance change that we would need to tighten up, and then certainly some logistics around coordination.
Well, like I said, maybe add to that, that we do a mailing to all the property owners so that they're aware, and there might be one bill that they'd be like, oh, okay, I guess I will take care of this.
Right. Agree, and certainly if there's consideration of an ordinance as well, right, would that ordinance, I'm just thinking out loud here, would that ordinance be citywide? So is this kind of a deficiency we have
I think you should,
citywide?
I think you should do it citywide. We can post it on the website and try to send out social media messages, but we have enough complaints throughout the city that it should be citywide.
How many miles of trail do we maintain approximately? Do you know what that?
No, I just presented that last week. I should probably know. It's gotta be 20, 30 miles, something like that.
That you're clearing snow each event. So, when you're doing 23 miles, 3 blocks one way and 3 blocks the other doesn't seem like a huge ask or that big of a budget difference compared to the 23 miles. Just kind of is my thought on that. So
The biggest problem with the downtown is that I see it, yeah, you can clear the sidewalk, but where do you put it? The street's this far away from the sidewalk, so there's no place to pile it up.
Well, that's
You
what
know.
that's what the property owners are having an issue with, and why there's such a berm. Part of the reason why there's that big berm there.
Well, so how do you solve that? It isn't something where they
Berms
get,
more often,
well,
I
what I'm getting at is, it's not something where the city can just run down that sidewalk and then run back and pile it up somehow. You still gotta deal with that pile when it's there. It isn't like the trails that he's talking about, they can blow that stuff off to the side, and it's a one-time deal. So the downtown is always gonna be a challenge, with getting rid of that snow, that berm. There's no question about that.
Which, I guess I'd bring it back to, what would it cost to, on heavy snow winters like we're in, where we maybe don't want to staff up, assuming that we're going to have a heavy snow winter every year. What would it take on a year like this to have somebody come in and clean those berms?
We'll have to look and see what that might be.
I'd be curious to know.
So, consideration of increasing frequency of berm removal, hearing that. Also hearing consideration of a contract solution for problem areas. Ongoing budget consideration for kind of snow removal priorities. If I can venture a guess, I'm assuming we are going to take this same exact conversation this summer. We're going to be talking about weeds removal, right? And
I
kind of
hope so.
code enforcement.
I
So
hope so. Yeah.
that also will be a conversation around enforcement and kind of budget. So if we're considering a change of ordinance, I guess my recommendation is that we think ahead to 6 months from now and consider
Weeds and grass.
weeds as well, weeds, grass, as well as snow. All of the Minnesota problems. Other kind of suggestions for next steps? I think it's, considering ongoing, ongoing budget of, are we staying aligned between policy and what's budgeted? Anything else? Don't want to miss anything?
Then we gonna discuss the plowing piece of it streetwise, is that?
Oh, and then, yeah, so go ahead on.
I don't have much to mention. I've had a couple comments or complaints about that, but just as I mentioned at the workshop, just maybe explaining more PR or social media about what the policy is, so they understand what it is, and if you wanted to change, maybe the budget or the tax implication that would be if there was a change to have a cleared to dry pavement. Because
Yeah.
you guys are doing a great job. I mean, this has been a challenge. I can't imagine what you guys have been through. So it's not easy, but then it's just easy for people to complain because they think they have the answers on how to handle this stuff. But one in every 5-year snow event, prior year for us this year, so.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we have the no black or no bare pavement policy, so that's one thing that's in the policy in the past. I mean, I think the Public Works tried to get everything down to black, but it also took them 14 hours to do the entire road, and it also probably double or triple the salt usage. So, I mean, salt usage, yeah, as cost, it's at $100 a ton now. When I started here, it's at $50 a ton, so that's doubled. And not only, you know, you hear from the watersheds and the lake associations that use as little salt as you want. You know, we have a lot of roads around Clear Lake and around Forest Lake that have signed petitions that they don't want salt, so we don't even salt the roads. You know, they're trying to do, I guess, their part to not have any going to the lake, so that's a complete policy decision. You know, if we want to go to bare roads, I can work you up numbers. It's staff, overtime, you know, wearing down cutting edges, all that, fuel, overtime, probably double or triple your salt budget. You know, so, you know, all my staff goes through smart salting training, and it's pretty scientific. You know, they know when it's at a temperature you don't even use salt. They know if it's 23 degrees and rising, you set your controller to 250 pounds per lane mile and put it on skip. And so, I mean, they're all trained to give the best possible scenario with using the least amount of salt. You know, and that was the feedback kind of when we put this policy together, was let's try to preserve the lakes. Let's not have sharks, you know, starting to swim in Forest Lake and Clear Lake, so.
I second that.
Yep, so, you know, there's a trade-off one way. We can grind down streets and get them black, and we can do that, or people can just slow down a little bit and understand it's winter in Minnesota. And I think the part you see in the policy too, we have priority roads. All those roads on the policy in red, all the main collector streets, those are the ones that we burn down to blacktop. So I think a lot of people have gotten accustomed to that, knowing that, okay, maybe it's gonna be snow covered till I get to X street, but then that street's gonna lead me to Highway 97 or Highway 61 or the interstate, and I'm out, you know, so. You know, it's a decision of where do you want to spend the money, or do you want to wreck the lake, or do you want everybody to have a black street? You know, Public Works will do whatever. It's just, you know, we need direction to go the other direction than we're going now.
Thoughts, follow-ups on that? Certainly. Anything else? Okay. Thank you. All right, let's move on to staff updates. We'll start with Karen.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I don't have any updates, except for the papers that you have at your seats there. If you could return those to me after the meeting is done.
Excellent. Thank you. And Dan.
Mayor, members of council, I just want to let everybody know that the website launched on the 18th. A lot of good positive feedback so far on the updates. I do want to thank staff for all the work that they did getting the updates on the individual pages and some of the content changes that were done. I'm still working just through a couple of small minor content changes that didn't quite get turned over, and a couple of ADA compliance issues that were identified through our final report. But those should all be done this week, and the new website is live, so went pretty smooth.
Fabulous. Nicely done. Abby.
Only thing to report is that we have posted the Community Development Administrative Assistant position. That is, we'll conduct our first round of reviews. I believe it's 2 full weeks it'll be open. It's open until filled. I would encourage folks that you might know to apply for the position. I just want to thank you again for funding it this year.
Excellent. Thank you, Abby. Patrick.
Just 2 things. Had continuing discussions with the school district regarding the ice rink and the land there, which we'll discuss later. And I met on Friday with Representative Anderson, our new rep, regarding legislative initiatives and the bonding bill. So hopefully we'll be submitting a few projects to them shortly for inclusion or in the lottery of the bonding bill that it is, so.
Excellent. Thank you. Amanda?
Yes, thank you, Governor Council. You had asked about background checks. I believe it was Commissioner Roberts had asked about background checks for tobacco and alcohol, and if it's the same background check, so there isn't any different information, or they just ran the same check and, put the document in twice, then we would want to waive one of the fees, and we have the ability to do so under our code right now.
You do have a way.
Yeah.
Excellent. Can we do that if that was not done this time? Can we refund those fees? I mean, if we did collect double fees, can we get those refunded for this cycle?
Yes, and in the situation, if it's, the code is gray enough, or we could certainly do that in the situation. I have to check with the chief or defer to the chief and make sure that what the police did is, literally the exact same document.
Okay.
The alcohol license has a little bit different language in terms of what they're saying about the background check, but in both cases, it's given to the police department to pull the background check. So if it's the same information that they pull, then we would want to just charge one time.
Excellent.
So would that then, for that individual, should they reach back out to the city or to talk about that to Karen, or are there multiple, maybe there's multiple people that have that same situation? I don't know.
Yeah, I thank you, Honor Council. I can work with Karen to confirm if there's additional people who have both liquor and tobacco for a background check, they would only want to pay one time.
Excellent. Thank you. Dave?
Nothing to add.
All right. Ryan?
Mayor, City Council, just want to make sure this is on your calendar. Our first public open house for County State Aid Highway 32 or 11th Avenue, Washington County roadway from Highway 61, basically to a little past 12th Street Southwest. Having our first public open house, 4:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m., Monday, February 27th, up in the community room. So right before your city council meeting will be the first public open house for County State Aid Highway 32. Earlier tonight, I know there were some comments made about Highway 97. That's a loaded response. A lot of work's been done there. Fortunate situation happens at Goodview. 3 years of city funding goes towards there. And then we have the two cooperative agreement projects going on. MnDOT's got the Highway 97 project going on, in 2025. That's gonna have some local share in it too. So it's a very loaded response. And there's a lot of things that, are still being looked at, pursued, and we had planned for, but, in reality, I think I don't know what the 97 project is at for cost-wise, but that just alone there, we're 12, 15 million in that project. So if we had to tackle that locally, imagine what that project cost would be and how that would impact us and not touch other components in the city, but just think about what we're gonna get in the next several years between now and 2026 with the cooperative agreement projects that we're doing with the county and the states and all the trails and the pedestrian facilities and the access management that are going to go along with those projects. So when those do get done, yes, probably the next phases are going to where potential growth is. We've tried to have intersection control changes in push and lead projects from the city's perspective. We just can't get the traffic counts at Harrow and Highway 97 to get the ICE study to support an intersection control. That could be either a roundabout or a signal. MnDOT would not allow that to be built there today because we don't have the warrant. We don't meet the warrants of that ICE report. So there's stuff that we've tried to do in increments to see if we can, get that approved and then work through funding opportunities. But until really the traffic density is there, MnDOT's going to focus on the needs that are way overdue versus something that's we're trying to plan for. We think opposite, right? But that's just there's more of a loaded response to what we do and why we do it and where we go and why. So if you guys ever want some of those off conversations or at a workshop, we can certainly engage on some of that. That's all I got.
Thank you, Ryan. Chief Peterson.
Yeah, Mayor and City Council members, good evening. I will, and follow up with the alcohol and the tobacco license background checks. I'll follow up with Amanda and Karen on that as well. I know there's a few things that you might check a little differently on the alcohol versus the tobacco, but I don't think it's that different. But I definitely don't want to give you an answer right now without looking into it further. We do have, currently have one vacancy in the police department for the position of police officer. And we posted that this past week. And we're hoping that we're going to get some adequate number of qualified candidates so we can interview those candidates hopefully by probably mid-February and start that process from there. And secondly, we were notified by the Washington County Sheriff's Office yesterday that the lakes and the ice is terrible out there, pretty much county-wide. And that's just because, you know, we had cold, started freezing, then we had the sleet, the rain, then it turned to slush, and then you have all the snow, and it's just not freezing quickly enough, and it's just not that strong ice. So I just want to make sure everyone knows to be very careful out there. I know a few ice fishermen, and they haven't been out there hardly at all. So you can be in one area, and it might be 3, 4, 5 inches thick of ice, and then you might go a few 100 feet, and it could be 8, 9, 10 inches of ice. So just want to let everyone know, especially those that enjoy the lake, that you need to be extremely careful out there. Other than that, that's all I have, unless you have
Did you
questions.
see on
for
the
me.
news, there was 6 of them that went down in Lake Pepin yesterday or
Yeah,
today?
yeah.
They were all parked together, and well, anyways.
Yeah, yep.
Luckily, it wasn't deep, but it's not good. Thanks, Chief.
Did I also see that the application for the Rotary Plunge was denied?
Yeah, because of the concern with the ice, you know, I'm definitely not going to speak for the Rotary. I do know that they're going to have further discussions in regards to the event, and I'm sure they will let the community know if there's something else that might happen, or who knows. So I'll let them make that announcement. But yeah, that as of right now, the Sheriff's Office is really concerned about the ice, so.
Makes sense.
Just to go off the Rotary, so I'm in the Rotary Club, and my understanding was the feedback from the city. A number of years ago, we did it in the park, but feedback from the city was that they don't have the staff to clear the sidewalks and allow that to happen. So I don't know if that's actually the case, or if that's just hearsay, but I would hope that if they do decide to put it in the park, that we try to work with them, and I don't know if that's even an option, but we did a number of years ago, and the city did a great job of clearing the snow, not as much as this, I understand that, so that might be hearsay and the wrong information, but that was communicated to the club
Recently?
in an email this morning.
Well, in the, respectfully, Councilmember Roberts, the email that went out with the Rotary newsletter today didn't necessarily say that there wasn't the staffing capacity. There's a large volume of snow in the park without having any of the sidewalks cleared at all right now. I think what we were trying to convey to them is that there's a pretty big volume there that we'd have to discuss, but I'm concerned for the infrastructure in place. If it was construed that there wasn't the staff capacity, I don't think that was maybe conveyed the best.
Okay, I may have misread that, but there was just communication about the city's ability, I guess, to clean up the park out for something like that.
Okay, Kevin.
Mayor, City Council, no updates from finance.
All right, very good, thank you. Blake? Councilmember Roberts.
I'm also a member of the Lions Club. I attended a meeting on Monday, or last Wednesday. They are not doing the Heydays event that they typically have done to sell food, so they're looking for fundraisers within the city, within the community to do. And so I welcome them to reach out to the city if there's any way that we can help in that capacity.
Excellent, very good. Councilmember Valento.
Nothing from me.
All right, Councilmember Husnick.
I attended a meeting last Monday for the Legion Post 225, and I know it has nothing to do with the city, except it was kind of interesting, and it was one of the few times that I can get there on a Monday night, okay?
Yes.
But one of the interesting things that came out is that they're rewarding their bartenders if they catch somebody that's trying to buy and they're not of age. And that's like a $40 or $50 bonus.
Nice.
And a couple of them have been caught, so there's some incentive to do a better job than we've been doing over there, so.
Nice carrot, right?
Yeah, nice carrot. That now they're looking a lot harder.
Right.
So, you know, what the heck, if you can earn an extra $50 that night, why not, you know? So,
Give it another
and it's a
go.
big job. I mean, that, when that place is full and they're busy, that, you know, they're trying to do the very best they can, because they've had trouble there a couple times, so. Anyways, that's all I have. Thank you.
Excellent. Councilmember Erickson?
No updates.
No updates from me either. And with that, I think we're at the end of our planned agenda with the exception of our closed session. Is someone ready to read us into closed session?
I will.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I move to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05 subdivision 3C3 to discuss the sale of city property PID 200-322-132-0009 and property ID 200-322-124-0001. The closed session will be held in the Forest Lake Conference Room and will commence immediately. Once the closed session is completed, the city council will reconvene the open meeting portion in council chambers. Once back in session, the council will adjourn the regularly scheduled council meeting.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, and we're in closed session.